welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo in Quito, Ecuador, and this is From the South. The number of people requiring food assistance in Argentina has risen from 8 million to 11 million since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. The surge in demand for government assistance comes as informal workers have been left without any work due to strict quarantine measures implemented to curb the outbreak. Over the past few years, many in Argentina have been struggling to make ends meet since the previous government left the country with a 40% unemployment rate.
People who were part of the food assistance program, but who occasionally had work, they entered and left the program. But today, they require more assistance. The demand for food assistance increased from 8 million people to 11 million people.
Nationwide protests continue against Brazil's far-right president due to what many call his deplorable response to the global pandemic. For 2 weeks, people have been banging pots and pans out their windows and balconies across the country during the president's nightly addresses. Over the past days, Bolsonaro has quarreled with a number of state governors who implemented quarantine measures to curb the spread of the COVID-19 outbreak, prioritizing the nation's economy over the well-being of its people. Venezuelan head of state informed of 8 new COVID-19 cases detected in the country on Tuesday, which raised the total number of infections to 143 cases.
I have to inform that as of Tuesday, there were 8 new cases detected, which means we reached 143 cases.
Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez read out the agreements reached by the Council of State. One of the 7 points is the demand for the Venezuelan people to be treated fair and as any other country in the world and be allowed to access its legitimate resources currently blocked by U.S. sanctions.
It's urgent that Venezuela can access the resources that legally correspond to the country, which have been locked by the actions of the United States. Likewise, we demand that Venezuela is treated like the rest of the countries of the world and be allowed to access mechanisms of humanitarian aid through financial and multilateral systems, which are being restricted in a directed way by Donald Trump's administration.
The province of Guayas in Ecuador has been the worst hit by the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, with well over 1,000 confirmed cases. Locals say the government's response has been lacking as many are dying in their homes, while authorities often take days to pick up the bodies.
The province of Guayas in Ecuador's coast has reported over 1,300 cases of COVID-19. On top of this, endless complaints by citizens on social media denounce a poor response from the government. For their part, authorities have tried to play down the issue by claiming that a disinformation campaign is trying to hurt the government. But the people of Guayaquil tell a different story.
The health system in Guayaquil collapsed. The phone number implemented by the government to tend to possible cases is a complete failure. Taking the COVID-19 test is expensive. People are dying on the street. We are seeing videos of this every day. Mere blocks from my house, there are bodies on the streets, waiting to be picked up by authorities.
Todas las autoridades distritales aquí en Santa Lucía.
People on the street tell similar stories, and they don't know who can help them. There's even rumors that official figures of the pandemic are being reduced significantly.
The bodies are not being tested for the virus. My brother died days ago, but we don't know if it was coronavirus, and we'll never know. He was diagnosed with dengue. He was obese and had diabetes. He was a high-risk case. We won't know the truth, and he won't be counted. We couldn't even have a funeral for him.
Meanwhile, accusations of corruption in the purchase of emergency equipment have come to light. The agency in charge has announced those involved in the corruption will be fired, as authorities insist the government is carrying out all possible measures to contain the pandemic.
We have increased the healthcare personnel in Guayaquil to take care of these type of emergencies using the appropriate equipment. People will be treated with dignity and respect during these times that we are living.
The wave of complaints about the bodies littering the streets of Guayaquil led to President Lenin Moreno to announce the creation of a task force that will make sure the dead receive a proper burial.
More stories coming up, don't go away. More news now. Bolivia's de facto government has announced some cash stipends as families don't have the means to get by during the coronavirus crisis. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, has the details.
In the city of Riberalta, in the department of Beni, residents have defied quarantine measures and took to the streets to demand the free provision of food, which the government had previously promised. Protesting residents also called on the government to implement public health security measures to stop the arrival of people and vehicles in the city, as the Beni department remains the only part of Bolivia where no cases of COVID-19 have been reported. So far, the government promised 2 weeks ago to give families an stipend of about $70 after each elementary student, and also promised a week ago to give free food packages worth some $50 to about 1.5 million families. However, to this date, the government hasn't fulfilled neither of its promises.
That was Freddy Morales in Bolivia. In Colombia, violence and harassment by illegal armed groups continues despite the quarantine imposed in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. More than 50 social leaders and human rights activists have been murdered since the beginning of this year.
In the past few days, Colombia is not just living under the threat of the new coronavirus, but the violence is not ceasing either. In some municipalities of the department of Cauca, like Caldono, Torbio, Corinto, and Tuturo, illegal armed groups are attacking areas where the indigenous people live, and they are caught in the mid-fire.
We make a call to these illegal armed groups to stop the harassment and to stop trying to take political and military advantage of the situation. It is not fair that while people are focused on saving lives by stopping the spreading of the coronavirus, you continue with violent acts which instill more fear in the people.
According to analysts, the main motivation of the armed groups are territory control and the management of the land for drug trafficking in rural areas where indigenous people who are right now focused on exercising vigilance against the spread of coronavirus in their communities, finding themselves caught in the wave of violence.
Some of these groups, which are called factions or FARC dissidents, what they aim is to exercise control to prove that they have a presence and that they won't let ethnic and state authorities impose measures in these regions. In this way, they engage in acts of violence.
The Cauca department has been in constant state of violence, where the most affected ones are the indigenous people. So far, in 2020, more than 30 have been murdered, and in the light of the current situation, the human rights organizations have a call for the cessation of the armed activities, not just in Cauca, but in all Colombia.
We are making a call to all illegal organizations to stop all terror activities, kidnappings, killing, and any other type of violence against the population. While this pandemic is having more and more serious consequences in several regions, social leaders are still being murdered and many communities are caught up in this violence.
Violence claimed the lives of more than 50 social and human rights activists in Colombia under the watch of the national government.
Burundi has confirmed its first 2 cases of the novel coronavirus. According to the health ministry, both cases are people who recently returned from abroad.
The first patient of Burundian nationality, aged 56, residing in Bujumbura, returned from Rwanda. He was hospitalized and presented a symptomatology in the form of simple flu since March 18, 2020. The second patient, also of Burundian nationality, aged 42, resident in Bujumbura, returned from Dubai via Rwanda. The results of the tests carried out by the National Institute of Public Health were positive for both patients.
China's embassy in Algeria handed over a donation of medical supplies to help in the fight against the novel coronavirus. The supplies include 10,000 test kits for COVID-19 and 160,000 surgical masks. A second shipment of aid is expected to arrive in the North African nation from China in the coming days. Algeria has so far confirmed 400 cases of the virus and 26 deaths.
Today, we are going through a crisis just like other people of the world. Under this situation, the Chinese embassy in Algeria and the Chinese General Chamber of Commerce in Algeria provided supplies to our Algerian Red Crescent, making us feel their support to the Algerian people.
Kenyan police has allegedly shot a 13-year-old boy on his balcony during an operation to enforce a curfew imposed to curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Residents of a Nairobi shantytown where the shooting took place said police started violently forcing people into their homes around 7 p.m. on Monday. During the confrontation, the boy was standing on his home's balcony when a bullet hit him fatally in the abdomen. The police has launched a probe into the incident, but human rights groups say the police is known for often using excessive force and carrying out unlawful killings. Tunisians from low-income families have taken to the streets to demand the financial aid pledged by the government amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Dozens of people gathered in front of the social welfare offices in Ariana province, despite daytime restrictions limiting movements to those of, quote, extreme necessity. The European Union pledged to grant about $275 million to Tunisia to help fight the novel coronavirus, which has so far infected 227 people and killed 5 others in the country. Uganda has announced a set of measures including the closure of shops selling non-essential items to halt the spread of the novel coronavirus. Let's have a look.
One is to prohibit all people-to-people movement by everybody, including those using their private vehicles, boda-bodas, tuk-tukus, etc. The second category of concentrations are the shopping malls, arcades, hardware shops, which gather a lot of people to sell and buy non-food items. These are suspended for 14 days, starting with the 1st of April 2020. Like the farms, we would like the factories to keep producing because that is the lifeblood of the country. However, the danger is in the workers going home and coming back. It is that daily movement that must be frozen. Let the factory owners arrange for crucial employees to camp around the factory area for the 14 days. If they cannot do that, let them suspend production for 14 days.
We're taking one last break, but don't go away. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump has accepted the help offered by Russian President Vladimir Putin to respond to the coronavirus pandemic. A spokesman for the Kremlin announced on Tuesday that Russia will send a plane with medical equipment to the U.S. to help health workers fight COVID-19. Moscow medical cooperation was one of the topics discussed by Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump during a long telephone conversation on Monday. The grave situation and the rapid rise of cases in the United States led to the Russian government to offer its help. Union workers at General Electric's aviation plant in the U.S. say the company is failing to keep employees safe from the coronavirus pandemic, adding that the company should refocus its efforts into building ventilators for hospitals.
If GE would clean up and sanitize the factory, we could start manufacturing ventilators that so many hospitals and patients need right now.
Enough's not being done. We want people to leave early and have them clean between every shift, and that's not being accomplished.
And staying in the U.S., nurses at the Ronald Reagan Medical Center at the University of California in the U.S. held a candlelight vigil on Monday night asking for more protection amid the pandemic. This marked the fifth time nurses have protested, and they say they'll continue to do so if the federal government doesn't give them more protective gear. Like their counterparts at other hospitals, they've been concerned about running low on protective equipment. Suddenly, the first case of healthcare workers who died from the novel coronavirus in Los Angeles County was confirmed by health officials on Tuesday, though no details were provided other than the person was over the age of 60.
Our country had time to get ready for this. We knew it was going to be bad. We are the richest, supposed to have the best. We spend more money on health care, and it's all failing.
UCLA announced a new guidance on the permissive use of face masks, broadening the number of nurses who have access to face masks. The same day, UCLA also announced new screening protocols for all staff, patients, and visitors entering the medical center and the clinic.
Just the other day, California received a shipment of 170 broken ventilators. Broken ventilators from the federal government that was sent from the national stockpile. This is unacceptable. We are in a war with an invisible enemy. And this enemy has already done more damage to the American economy and American society than any other foreign power has in the past.
This morning, Governor Newsom announced a temporary executive order that could allow hospitals to shift staffing ratios. As nurses, we fully understand the need to be prepared in the event that this large influx of incoming COVID patients.
On Tuesday, financial markets in the U.S. closed out the worst quarter since the 2008 crisis. On Wall Street, stocks dropped by 20% over the past 3 months. In March alone, the S&P 500 dropped by 12.5% due to fears caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. This historic collapse comes despite massive efforts by the U.S. government to appease investors by investing trillions of dollars into the markets and allowing for the unlimited purchasing of bonds by the Federal Reserve. Moving on, novel coronavirus cases have risen to 12 in the Gaza Strip after the Ministry of Health reported 2 new infections.
2 new infections were recorded inside the quarantine centers. All necessary measures were taken from them, and they were transferred to the isolation hospital at the Rafah crossing. They were not in contact with anyone else. The number of people infected with coronavirus after returning from abroad to the Gaza Strip now stands at 12.
In the United Kingdom, a Chinese team of medical workers arrived in London to support the new coronavirus pandemic. The Shandong province team is integrated by 15 members and includes 6 medical experts specialized in disease prevention and control, traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine, as well as psychological counseling. The team held a video conference with their British counterparts on Monday, sharing Chinese approaches and experiences in the fight against COVID-19. In addition, the Chinese Solidarity team brought medical supplies that will be donated to local hospitals. The number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Britain reached 22,141, according to the latest figure from the Department of Health and Social Care. The Spanish government has introduced a set of new measures to mitigate the economic impact of the coronavirus crisis, including a monthly stipend of about $480 for all temporary workers who were fired due to the state of emergency.
All evictions without alternative housing in vulnerable homes are suspended from today until 6 months after the end of the state of emergency. No one can be evicted from their home. All current rental contracts that are about to expire are automatically extended for 6 months. A measure that in practice means that no tenant in Spain with a current contract can have their rent raised during the next 6 months.
Por tanto,
during the period of the state of emergency, electricity, water, and gas providers cannot suspend service to any citizen in their permanent homes.
The Ukrainian parliament has voted to lift a ban on the sale of farmland, paving the way for the country to get an $8 billion worth of loan from the International Monetary Fund. The bill opens up the land market for the Ukrainian citizens starting from July 1st, 2021, and for Ukrainian companies starting from 2024. And Ukrainians will vote in a referendum on whether to allow foreigners to buy farmland. However, opposition lawmakers say the bill will lead to big corporations pushing out independent farmers from the market. In Cuba, as part of the prevention measures to fight against the new coronavirus, the Ministry of Culture informed that all artistic events, both national and international, that involve huge crowds of people are postponed. However, in the Caribbean island, the artists didn't stand still.
In this way, the first online transmission in times of coronavirus by a Cuban artist. When the pandemic strikes, there are threats and isolation is recommended. The best stage can be a living room. That is why David Blanco and his musicians decided to come through with their art.
We feel the need and the duty of talking through the media to all of our young public that follow us. The importance of what the health system says, the importance of staying home.
In the Iceland, the idea of making concerts on Facebook or Instagram Live have been followed by many. From accomplished artists like the diva of Buena Vista Social Club, Omar Portuondo, or one of the best pianists in the world like Chucho Valdés, to young talents like Etiel Failde.
Hi, I'm Omar Portuondo. We need to have a lot of hygiene. We have to fight coronavirus.
I am Etiel Failde, director of the Failde Orchestra, and we are making this video, being part of Staying Home.
The truth is that in Cuba, in times of a pandemic nightmare, solidarity multiplies. Now more people can enjoy with the finest artists in emissions from digital platforms and join transmissions of online concerts using several hashtags, which are also aired on Cuban television, radio, and a YouTube channel of the Ministry of Culture on 100 pages in Facebook.
It has been very meaningful that in that time, as hard as these one musicians are in their homes without work because the income source has been closed, the decision has been that even many of them have financed the streaming concerts in favor of live, and also they have left the Music Institute and the Ministry of Culture. Now they will to take part of this.
In the case that no one wants to stay out of this humanitarian initiative, the National Symphony Orchestra rehearses in a mini concert of 14 of their musicians to broadcast online.
This is a call of hope for the Cuban people that is a virtuous and heroic people that deserve the best luck.
The admire. That's why there's no shortage of messages nor songs.
Greetings to all the doctors that are working. You are my hero. I believe humanity should value this profession more. I send your biggest kisses.
Who wouldn't want to know medicine to be able to help where it's most needed?
All the Cuban doctors that make us feel so proud today, saving lives where it needs the most. They're in Italy, where the coronavirus is taking many lives, and I am very proud of you, so I dedicated this song to you, which is called En Todas Partes.
La amistad es una semilla que brota en cualquier lugar.
And with that beautiful song, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesorenglish.net. And don't forget to join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.